Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who we haven't met me personally before, my name is Rob Walker. I am the director for the Sasol Solar Challenge. Let me just turn my camera on so that you can see that there's actually a person here. Good morning, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to have so many people joining us. It's a very, very popular subject. From myself at the Sasol Solar Challenge, thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us. I'm not going to speak too long. I'm going to hand over to Mr. MJ Khan, who is our presenter this morning. If I could ask that everyone just keeps yourself on mute so we avoid any background noise, unless Mr. Khan specifically asks you to unmute yourself and maybe say something. And then he will go through the format with you for today's workshop. I hope that what you guys take away from this is a lot of value, and that you can take it back to your teams or your everyday life and implement what MJ talks about. From us at the Sasol Solar Challenge, we have seen a huge improvement on our kind of work since we've worked with MJ. He's worked in a lot of different fields, and his fundamentals are based on practices that really work. So from my side, I'd like to thank MJ for taking the time today for joining us, and I'm going to hand over to Mr. MJ Khan to take us forward. MJ, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks so much for the introduction and welcome, everybody. Very, very humbling to see all the names pop up and a lot of familiar faces from around the world. So waving to the people over in Turkey and other places that we've worked with before. Great to see everyone on board. And yeah, my name is MJ Khan. And as we go through the presentation, what I really want everyone to do up front is grab a piece of paper and a pen, because at the end of the session, we're going to build a functional working content strategy for your brand. Now, your brand may be a solar team. It may not be a solar team, but whatever we discuss right here, I want you to internalize it for your own brand, whether it's your personal brand or your team brand. So again, this is going to speak to everyone. It's going to try and build something that we can work that's credible, sustainable, valuable. And again, thank you for joining me. So pen, paper at hand, and then we're going to kick things off. Cool. So for those who I can see on video, if you can give me a quick thumbs up, if you can see my screen, my slides. Fantastic. So let us jump into it. A little bit about myself before we begin. So my name is MJ Khan, and I'm the Group Digital Platforms Manager at Sasol. Sasol, as some of you know, is the title sponsor for the Sasol Solar Challenge, and I've been in communications for almost 20 years. A little bit about myself. So I manage all the digital platforms and social media for Sasol across the 31 countries that we operate in. And that includes sponsorships, retail, social investment, you name it. I spent a lot of my former life developing curriculum, and I've lectured at various institutions, and I've developed curriculum and syllabus for over 19 tertiary institutions in South Africa. So for those in South Africa, I've lectured at Wits University, UKZN, so University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban University of Technology, UNISA, amongst others. Mail and Guardian top 200 young South Africans a few years, but most importantly, I'm currently playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm watching Rick and Morty season 4, and I'm eating chicken lick and hot wings. So that's just a little bit about me before we jump into it. So ideally today, what we'd like to go through is what makes digital special and just define it, because sometimes we talk about these things and we make assumptions, but we don't really define it. So I wanted to make a few definitions up front. Then we'll look at how can we develop a social media content strategy using what I call the 4 C's. And this is where the pen and paper is going to come in. And then finally, a discussion, a Q&A, ask me anything, and let's really build something very cool together. So when we talk about digital, I think what's important upfront for us to recognize is everyone online is a content creator. So whether that individual is someone with a Facebook page and they're publishing content there, they're sharing content, someone who's curating a Twitter feed, someone who's uploading TikTok videos, or even sharing them, everyone online is a content creator. And that includes brands. So brands like Red Bull, which famously did the stratosphere jump a few years ago, brands like Sasol, and even brands like your own Solar Challenge teams, brands like your own production companies. I see some people from production houses here. So every single brand has the opportunity to be an online content creator. And that's really what makes online special. And that's what makes it different. And that's what we're going to unpack today. When it comes to defining digital, my favorite definition is actually by Bud Cadell. And he says, digital is a participatory layer of all media that allows users to self-select their own experiences. And what I like about this is he's not saying that you have television or print and digital is its own little bucket. He's saying that digital is a layer above all of that. So you could have something like radio, and then digital for radio is how can you participate in that? So think about how different Spotify is compared to traditional radio, where now through digital, you can self-select what you want to listen to, your playlists. Think about traditional television where you just had to sit at a certain time and consume whatever was there. And now with YouTube and Netflix, it's on demand. We are getting to select our own experiences. We are getting to curate our own experiences. And that for me is a very good working definition of digital. So digital is taking all our assets and allowing people to participate, allowing it to be interactive and allowing people to self-select. So that really is, for me, a very good working definition of digital that we can use going forward. So let's really jump into it. And the presentation itself is going to be about 30 minutes, and then we're going to have as much conversation as possible. But obviously in between, we're going to pause, we're going to stop, and we're going to start discussing like, what can we do, what can't we do? Awesome. So a lot of brands have been talking about the idea of content strategy and content marketing, and it really has been at the forefront of a lot of the brand building discussions. So if you look at popular brands like Coca-Cola, about 10 years ago, they developed a content strategy called Liquid and Linked, and they tried to focus more on how do we create meaningful content. A brand like Nike as well. So as much as we know them for sports apparel, they've really been focusing a lot more on creating content for Nike. So how do we make sure that Nike is relevant every day, not just when you're going and buying their sneakers? The same can be said for Red Bull. And we've seen that shift where they've transitioned from being an energy drinks company to now really being a content production house with over 500 content producers. And that's really how they've developed their niche. Brands like Sasol, it's something that we've been focusing on strongly for the last 5 years, is building a sustainable content strategy so that we can tell our brand story. So let's jump into the 4 C's, and everyone grab your pen and paper because it's about to kick off. Cool. So the first C, and remember there's 4 C's, right? So we're going to keep count. The first C is context. And context really is, what is your objective? So write down the name of your team or the name of your brand up front at the top of the page. And then tell me, what is your objective? What do you want to really achieve with, with your content strategy? What do you want people to know about your business? What do you want people to know about your solar team? So for me, a few examples I can think of for objectives is I want sponsors to recognize that we have a viable property and we want them to get involved. Through association with our brand, they can get some form of benefit. So if that's an objective for you, I'd like you to write that down. So that could be an objective. Another objective could be, if you're at a university, I want not just the faculty, but I want the university to get behind me. I want alumni to get behind me. I want every single student to be excited that their university has a team in the Sasol Solar Challenge. So that could be another objective. And really, we're looking for about 2 or 3 objectives. So I'm just going to throw out a few ideas. And as I'm doing that, just write down very loosely what your objectives are. Now, we don't have to get smart at this point. And by smart, I mean, we don't have to have those objectives that are really measurable and actionable and time sensitive. For now, it's just about thinking, where do I want to play? What is that spot I want to meet? And how do I measure success? So a few more objectives. So number 1, we mentioned sponsorships. Number 2, we mentioned building that morale and getting the university excited to really come on board and rally behind what you're doing. Another objective could be for you to articulate your story, and maybe this is for future employers. So as an engineering student, as a scientist, as someone in the humanities like I was, who's part of the Sasol Solar Challenge, who has a team, how are you building your professional skill set? How are you then using this platform to package yourself, to package for what is really going to be exciting? And that really is the future. And we know renewables is part of that mix. So how do you position yourself there? So that could be an objective. Another objective is, how do you ensure that your faculty gets the requisite funding going forward so that you can continue with your research, you can continue doing groundbreaking work? So yeah, those are just some ideas of objectives. And I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds just to let you have a look at what you've written down and maybe just tweak it slightly. And all I'm looking for is write down about 2 or 3 objectives. Like, why do you want to build a content strategy? Why do you want to use digital in order to push a certain objective? And folks, if we like, we can either open up for questions at key points. Like if you want to open up for questions at this point, we can discuss a few objectives, or we can move on. So what I'll do is we can open up the floor now, if you like, for a few questions. If anyone wants to share some objectives that I haven't mentioned, that'll help others. Because what's also important is that we're going to build everyone. It's not about, here's what I'm going to do for myself and my team. It's how do I build up the equity of the challenge itself. So if we like, and if anyone would like to break the ice, you're welcome to now share one of your objectives that you'd like to measure. And that'll just help me as well in terms of how we proceed with the workshop. In fact, let me put Rob on the spot if he's still online. Rob, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here, MJ.
So Rob, what is one of your objectives? Why would you want to use a content strategy, or why would you want to look at content as a way to push your objectives?
So I think one of our objectives would be going forward would be to obviously increase the number of participants in the Sasol Solar Challenge. So for us, that's one of the objectives that we do. And we kind of split that between both local participants and international. And the reason that has obviously direct influence on the event and on the challenge itself. So for us, that's one of our key objectives when it comes to our content strategy.
That's fantastic. And I think I really like that objective because it's something that we can measure. It's about increasing the participants, and it is about local and international, which actually tees me up very well for my next slide, which is target market. So once you know what you want to achieve, once you know what your objective is, and again, the objectives can be something small and measurable and incremental. Maybe right now you don't have a team yet. And I know I've seen some people on the call who are very interested, but they don't have that team yet. Maybe your objective for the next 6 months is putting together a business case for why you should have a team in the next Sasol Solar Challenge that's happening next year. So again, some ideas, and it's very important to internalize it, bring it home. So when we speak about target markets, do you have an idea of who you want to speak to? What does that segmentation look like? And one of the worst things we do is we say we want to talk to everyone. Because when you talk to everyone, you're really diluting your efforts. So do you have an idea who their target market is? What do you want to tell them? So for us at Sasol, with the Sasol Solar Challenge, we have multiple stakeholders that we want to engage with. We want to engage with youngsters. We want to really engage with the next generation of scientists and engineers, school kids who are curious, and we want to inculcate that love of engineering in their hearts. And we want to sort of harness that curiosity so they can go out and build solutions that will help their community. So that's one of our target markets. So we put that down. And if our objective is to increase the relevance of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics in South Africa, we then measure it against that. So for each of your objectives, think about who do you want to speak to? If your objective is, how do I convince my faculty, or how do I convince my lecturers and my university to participate in this? Then what sort of content will you put out there to really rally them? And that's really the next point, So under context, we still have the first C. You've got your objectives, and now start thinking about that target market. Start thinking about all those individuals that you want to speak to, all those different segmentations that really resonate with you. Who do you want to be associated with? Who do you want to recognize your content? So that in 5 months' time, when someone says, what do you associate with the brand? It's exactly what you think it is. So again, think of your personal brand. So with my personal brand, even though right now I've got this beard that's making me look like Zangief from Street Fighter, I really want people to know me for digital marketing, know me for strategic corporate communications, and even know me for Chicken Licken. Why not? Who wouldn't love some form of sponsorship from them? And so for those international guests, Chicken Licken is a very popular fried chicken brand in South Africa. Think of it like KFC, but with flavor. So like that, what's your personal brand? What do you want people to associate you with? Your target market. Do you want them to know you for certain things? So what does that look like? And just make notes. So again, objectives, target market. Cool. So that's really upfront. And it's important that we talk about context first. And the reason for that, and I want to share a quote I really love. And this quote is by Alain de Botton. He's a Swiss philosopher. And he says, most of what makes a book good is that we are reading it at the right moment for us. So we can talk about content, we can talk about the value of content, but we need to understand context. We need to understand that content is only valuable if it answers what people need at that moment. So that's why we always start with context first. What do we want to achieve? And then we say, what content can we use to achieve that goals? So yeah, just something to think about. So what I like to do with Alain de Botton, and I want you to reflect on this as well, is replace the word book with song. And just think about that. Most of what makes a song good is that we're listening to it at the right moment for us. And think about those songs that you heard at certain milestones in your life and how that resonates with you. And again, certain smells, certain experiences. So a very powerful way to understand context. Like, how do we be relevant to whoever we're speaking to? How do we make them care and come on this journey with us? Cool. So let's jump into the second C, content. So we've got a sense of what we want to achieve, and we know who we want to talk to. Now let's talk about how we package that. Cool. So let's come back to Nike. So previously, Nike's biggest challenge was that when it came to something like sneakers and running shoes, people would only buy them if they were serious runners or even semi-professional runners. They would buy a new pair of shoes every 9 to 18 months. So typically what would happen is at the point of conversion, which is this big spiky triangle at the middle, that's when you get a lot of information. Buy this pair, this is really great, this is endorsed by Michael Jordan, this has certain technology in it. And a lot of the communication used to be around the point of conversion. Think about campaigns and events. Sometimes we prepare for an event and we have so much activity during the event that, and the times when we don't have events, those sort of down times, everything sort of drops down and you're no longer relevant. So the problem that Nike had was if people were only talking about Nike when they were buying shoes or buying apparel, Nike wasn't relevant and top of mind throughout the rest of that life cycle. So what they started doing is they started developing apps like the Nike Fuel app. They started developing touch points so that Nike would be part of your life every day. If you're going out for a run, Nike would then brand, hey, you've done 5 kilometers on your Nike app. Here's what it looks like. And other brands are like that as well, because we want to maximize our relevance, not just at the point of conversion, but at the opportunity pre-purchase and at the opportunity post-purchase. So what this means for the solar team is you can't simply be active only during solar challenges. You need to have a consistent content strategy that takes people on that journey beforehand so that you're always relevant. Because think about it this way, we're competing with so much for attention, whether it's us on a forum complaining about season 8 of Game of Thrones and how they ruined it, or any other thing that takes our attention away from brands. So it really is, how do we make sure that we're relevant at every stage? And how do we make sure that we always have a story to tell? So the old way of looking at content, and I used to do a lot of content strategies and digital marketing strategies for larger retail brands, is that previously the model was we'd have big campaigns at certain points. So Easter's coming around, a big campaign for Easter. If it was Christmas, we'd have a campaign for Christmas. back to school, depending on the brand. And then you have these spikes, you have these highs, and then it just drops in between. And really the idea of a content strategy is how do you ensure that you have these campaigns, you have these big spikes, but you always have some form of communication, some form of narrative. So you're always keeping that conversation going. And the way I like to look at it is, for me, campaigns are fireworks. They get everyone's attention, they up in the air, it's really beautiful, but it's expensive, so you can't maintain it. So you grab everyone's attention with a firework, that's a campaign, and your bonfire is that warm fire that keeps people there, that's part of their journey, that's invested emotionally in what you're doing as a team on your way to the solar challenge, during the solar challenge, and after. And that's really why we look at saying, let's have content layers. We have our fireworks, which is expensive, but you can't maintain it because it's really intensive. And then you have your hygiene, you have your bonfire, you have that warm fire that then attracts people, and they come and sit around and they enjoy it and they leave and they come back. And that's really what we're trying to build here. So let's look at how that looks practically. And I want to share with you what the Sasol Solar Challenge team is doing. And at this point, I want to give a shout out to Damien and them. They're doing such a great job on the social media platforms. And I'm sure you're noticing it with me as well, that the content there is so rich and so engaging. And it really is building the Sasol Solar Challenge brand. So this is what they do. And I want you to look at it in terms of 3 layers. So the bottom layer is that Monday to Friday plan that they have. That's what we call the always on layer. The layer above that is your campaign layer. So that's when they do the big things, like that's when they do applications are going to open. So that's a big campaign, lots of activity. Or we're going to give away tickets to the Bridgestone World Solar Challenge for the best performing African team and international team. Again, that's another big campaign. It's a big thing. You do it now and then, get lots of attention, but you can't sustain it. But that's great because it has its place. And then at the top, it's the tactical opportunities. It's, hey, the team that was in the Sasol Solar Challenge just won this other challenge. Well done to them. So that's really how they build it. And I want you to do that as well now. So just on your piece of paper, just draw 3 lines with a little bit of space in between them. Above the first line, call it tactical. So those would be opportunities where you can't really plan for it, but you can then credibly speak about your team in there. So maybe from a tactical opportunity for the teams to think about is maybe your university, if you're a university team, is in the news for something. And someone who's profiled, again, in the news for something positive, and someone who's profiled maybe has a link to the Sasol Solar Challenge or has a link to your departments or faculties. That's the tactical opportunity. Let's talk about that. Or maybe the Minister of Energy in South Africa is talking about renewable energy as an option and independent power providers or something like that there. Then is there an opportunity for you to then profile your work? That would be a tactical opportunity. And why tactical opportunities is at the top is because you can't really control it. It's about being a little reactive and jumping into the moment as opposed to planning. So write tactical at the top. Then above the second line, write campaign. So campaigns are your big ticket items. Campaign is when we actually at the Sasol Solar Challenge. What does that look like? Campaigns could be, what's the preparation you're doing for scrutineering? Campaigns can be, what are you doing at campus or at college or university to get support? Those big items. Maybe once the global pandemic has sort of ceased a bit and social distancing rules have relaxed, are you going to do something big? Or even during social distancing rules and the pandemic, are you having virtual launches when you announce your new car? That's a campaign, that's big. So again, not sustainable because, those things are quite big ticket items, but there's a big space for them. And then finally, what I want you to do is above that third line, the bottom line, just write always on. And this is where we're going to spend a few minutes now thinking about what are the different areas you can play in. So let me unpack some of the thinking behind what the Sasol Solar Challenge team has done. So every Monday, they want to highlight the human element of the race, the challenge. And what's really valuable about the human element of the challenge is at the end of the day, yes, we're celebrating innovation, we're celebrating technology, but we're celebrating the grit and resilience of the humans that are behind that. And I see it firsthand. So I'm very lucky. I've been able to attend a number of the Sasol Solar Challenges over the years and participate in it from a sponsorship perspective, and really get the story out there. And what I remember are the stories of struggle, of resilience, of overcoming odds, and the success that is linked to that. I remember days where it was pouring rain at 6 o'clock in the morning, like torrential storms, and teams are holding marquees and tarpaulins and trying to keep their solar car a little dry and trying to fix things. I remember on the first day of the challenge in 2018, where a gust of wind actually broke the bonnet of one of the cars, and they had to drive back to their campus, to their college, work through the night, fix it, and come back. And that really, for me, is a success story, is how are we celebrating the human element? So if the team asks you to get in touch and share those stories of the triumphs and the struggle in the past, share those. Let's not downplay that this is a challenge. It's not easy. That's why not everyone does it. And that's why those who do it and those who are on this call should be celebrated. On Tuesday, what the team does, and I really like this, is they talk about the global solar challenge community. So all the other races that are happening in different continents, all the sister races, and really it gives us the sense of this is a global community that's innovating around the world. As much as we innovate here in South Africa, there's innovation happening in the Netherlands, in Japan, in Australia, in the US, you name it. So a really great opportunity as well. On Wednesday, their focus is innovation. Now remember, everything that they do has a point of view of Sasol Solar Challenge. So it's not just innovation, talking about innovation for innovation's sake. It's innovation from the lens or the point of view of the Sasol Solar Challenge. So what do they view as innovation? So for me, innovation could be, in my personal capacity, innovation could be, I like gaming, so it might be virtual reality gaming. If that doesn't have a link in the Sasol Solar Challenge, they don't care about it. For them, their innovation is really around the solar spectrum. So innovation in terms of the rays, innovation in terms of car design, innovation in terms of solar itself, so battery capacity. And that's their point of view. And then Friday, what they do is every Friday they try to highlight either aspects of the route to make the race really cool, because again, we're really blessed in this country. We have beautiful locations. Or on Fridays, they highlight some of the sponsors. And that again is very powerful, is if your objective is to retain or attract sponsors so that you have a financial partner on this journey with you, what are you doing to celebrate them? So that's what the Sasol Solar Challenge does. So let's talk about our own content themes. Now I want everyone now to focus under that bottom line where we had always on. Let's just start with 3, because sometimes it's a bit daunting to do it every day of the week, right? But let's start with 3 areas that we can look at as potential content themes or content pillars. So look at it this way, right? So a popular content pillar globally is Motivation Monday. And what happens there is brands then share inspiring quotes, or people share inspiring quotes. And that's a nice sort of generic global theme. Thursday is the popular one, Throwback Thursday. So maybe we can now start thinking about what are those pillars that you can introduce into your content planning that is credible. So very important. Is it credible for your brand? Is it something you should be speaking about? If you are for example's sake, if you are NWU, Northwest University, and you're the Northwest University solar team, should you be talking about the Premier Soccer League that has resumed play, Bundesliga? No, unless it has something to do with solar challenges, you ignore that. You only talk about what's credible to you. You talk about what is in your space. So upfront, number 1, write down next to your 3 lines, write down credible. Very important. Everything we do has to speak to our brand. So a brand like Sasol, what's credible for us? So we're a large sponsor of women's football in South Africa. In fact, Sasol sponsors the women's national team, affectionately known as Banyana Banyana. So anything to do with Banyana Banyana, that's very credible for us as a brand. So we will then go and we'll endorse it, we'll share it, we'll celebrate it, because we're part of that journey, we're part of that investment. We have something to show there because of our investment, and we don't just piggyback of it. The men's team is called Bafana Bafana, and it doesn't matter. They could go on and win the World Cup. I doubt they will, but they could. And as a brand, we just sit down. Why? Because it's not credible for us to go and celebrate their success, because for us, it really is banyana banyana. We're about women empowerment, and that's our angle. So very important, whatever you do, be credible. Don't just jump on trends for the sake of it, unless you have something relevant to add to the conversation. The S in the CSV, S is for sustainable. And sustainable is whatever pillar or whatever theme you want to think about putting in. Like, as I showed you, these themes over here from the Sasol Solar Challenge team. Are those themes, are they sustainable? Can you talk about it for more than 3 weeks? And that's really the test. Because if you can, then you can tell a story. Because you tell a story over time. And if something's like a one-off, then it's not a theme, it's a tactical. Then you put it right at the top as tactical, because it's a once-off. But really what you're looking for here when you develop these pillars is you're looking, what is sustainable? What can I talk about maybe once a week, maybe once a month, and really tell that story from now till February. So I'll give you an idea of a sustainable theme that maybe you can put into your plan as you're making your notes. Maybe a theme that you could have is a team member profile. So once a week, maybe you want to profile one of your team members, whether they are in the engineering faculty, whether they are in the comms faculty, science faculty, whatever they're doing. Maybe once a month, your theme is that you want to profile, let's say, for example, the lead professor and their thoughts on on solar challenges and what they think innovation is going to be. Maybe once a week, you want to profile the drivers or whatever it is like that there. If you've got a team of, for argument's sake, 10 people, that then becomes 10 stories you can tell over time. So each week you can tell a different story. So again, just an idea. Maybe what you also want to do as a theme is you want to curate content. So chances are you're reading a lot of what's happening about solar technology around the world. Maybe you want to share that once a week with your audience and give your spin on it, give your take on it. Say, we're seeing that this is becoming very popular in this market, and this is what we think about it. So then you start pushing a thought leadership pillar once a week. So again, something to think about, and then we're going to pause after I finish the V, and then we're just going to say, what are some of the areas we can play with? What are some of the potential themes we can use? So C for credible, S for sustainable, and V, and this is a really important one, and sometimes we forget about it when we develop content as teams. V stands for valuable. Whatever you create, is it valuable for your audience? Are you doing it just because of the sake of doing it? Or do you think that there's some value for the audience, that they can see it and they can take something away from it? That really is a powerful part of the formula, is where whatever you create, firstly, is it credible? Does it make sense for you? Is it sustainable? Is it a story? And number 3, is it valuable? So when you share it with those out there, can they learn something from it? Can they do something with it? Can they engage with you? So let's now pause for a second, and I might bring Rob back on air, or if not, maybe someone else is also listening in to tell me, like, what do you think would be a good content pillar for your area? So Rob, I know we've already used some of what the Sasol Solar Challenge is doing, and maybe I'll pause a bit to talk about some of our other properties. So we also sponsor a women's league in South Africa called the Sasol League. And that is 144 teams across all the different provinces in the country. And they play competitively. And it's a semi-professional league. And for them, what they find really valuable from a content pillar perspective is every Tuesday, the Sasol League platforms, they do an engagement post. So they'll take like a crossword puzzle or something like that there, and then they'll repackage it for Sasol League. So they'll take a mechanic of something that's very engaging. Like they'll take a picture of players playing with a football, and they'll duplicate the ball in 3 different places, and they'll ask the audience, where do you think the ball is? Spot the differences, what's missing. So that's been a very popular pillar for them. Sometimes they'll give a description of a player in terms of their position when they started playing, and they'll ask people, can you guess who it is? So there's lots of different ways we can then package these pillars. But I'm going to pause for a few seconds now, because this is often a very difficult thing to wrap your heads around, is what are those 3 things we can talk about every week that is sustainable and is valuable. And I also want to highlight, whatever we're talking about today, it must not feel like work. Because I honestly think that everyone who's on this chat, and I truly believe this, has a great story to tell. And all we need to do is just figure out what is a formula that allows us to tell that story without it feeling like work. What is that formula where we can plan a little bit in advance and we know that the story will continue? Because as we all know, life happens. And when life happens, it's easy to deprioritize certain things. So what we really want to do is, how can we create this framework so that it's not difficult to produce these stories? So with that, I'm going to open up the floor once again. And I just want to ask if anybody wants to contribute and just talk about what could be potential content theme for your brand that you can talk about fairly regularly.
I want to say something. Hi, by the way.
Hello.
I want to say I saw something that Anadolu Solar team makes. Actually, they included me in one episode. They do something every week on Fridays. They have a Zoom call where there's a guest speaker, which is one of the older team members. And I find it really engaging. I made mine and also participated to some of other people's ones. So I think it was really nice, and a lot of students from other majors were also in the call, because in time they shared every week on their Instagram, and in time I think it's kind of picking up, and some people from other majors or like not related to race also are in the call. So they're kind of collecting kind of an audience from the university, and I found it really nice.
I love that. Absolutely love that. That's such a great example, Seema. Thanks so much for sharing. Is to have a pillar that really talks about legacy and alumni. So I know some of the teams that are present, they've got people who have been part of the Solar Challenge in the past, who have experienced it. And it would be great to get reflections from them, you know. Where are they now? What did the experience mean to them? And just to share their experiences and their stories, that's a great pillar. So teams, if you've got, if you've got legacy with solar challenges, maybe that's a great pillar for you to use, is how do you then tap into your alumni network? How do you build on, as they say, stand on the shoulder of giants and really get that? Because that does a few things. Number one is it gives your team that rich legacy and credibility. And number two, it gives us all an opportunity to share and learn. So fantastic idea, Seema. Would anyone else like to share a potential content pillar that they have, or something that they do regularly that the rest of us can learn from? And it's very important, I think, because we're trying to build each other up. We're trying to build up the Solar Challenge community.
MJ?
Hi, Sophia.
I have a question, please. Nothing to share, but a question. So you were talking about credibility and where a brand must focus on what it's talking about, and not jump around in terms of topics. But I noticed recently that a lot of brands are getting trashing for not addressing certain trends or things that are happening in the world. So then where's the balance between focusing and then running your brand well, and where's the line between being controversial and moving away from your focus, and then also running it well and addressing what needs to be addressed?
Okay, now that's a great question. Thanks so much. So it's essentially, how does a brand weigh up where it needs to have a voice and where it doesn't? And what does a brand do when, the world is perhaps moving in certain areas, or there's certain discussions happening? Does a brand have a place in those discussions? And I might actually have a slide on that a little later. Ah, here we go. Look at that. Oh, and by the way, definitely not a plant. Didn't ask you to ask that question. It's very similar to my thinking because it's something we do have to tackle. So I honestly believe that when it comes to being a brand and the idea that a brand value is now really about what does a brand stand for? Is a brand authentic? And for me, a brand is authentic not because of what they say, but because of who they are and what they do. So if we look at brands who stand up for certain things, whether it's a movement that's topical at the time. Now, a brand for me is brave, not just if a brand has a position on something, but can actually articulate internally what that means. So if a brand says that they stand for women's rights, for example, or they believe in gender equity and gender equality, then that's easy to say as a brand, but how does that translate into maybe a brand's employee ratio? How does that translate into a brand's leadership segment? So a popular car manufacturer a few years ago did a long post about supporting equality and supporting specifically gender equality. But then the first thing people said was, but if we look at your board of directors, if you look at your group executive committee, there's not a single woman in your leadership structures. So I think that's where brands trip themselves up is, sure, have a position or something, but before you just say something to be trendy or topical or cool, is it authentic for the brand? Does it actually make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, what are you doing to transform? I mean, we have to think as well, if brands don't have representation at leadership levels, are they really brands that are representative, brands that understand the world, and brands that are diverse enough to be valuable? And it's something we need to talk about, because if you exclude women from your leadership sort of sectors, then what does that say as well? So it's very important that brands not just consider what they do say to be topical or trendy, but is it authentic? Does it actually make sense for that brand? And if not, maybe that brand should not get involved, because they themselves are simply not representative of the cause that they want to be part of. I hope that makes sense. And just to unpack that a little bit further, there's that constant struggle between what you stand for as a brand and what's credible for you and what maybe the audience wants from you. And this is something I learned maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. I used to work on a contraceptive brand. And, the brand itself, it wasn't out there. It was more of a very cheeky brand. It was like, winking and very full of innuendo. It wasn't a crass, explicit brand. And that's what we wanted to do with the brand. And that was the brand essence. And that was what's credible for us. That's the brand position. And we were supposed to maintain that. But what we found is that on Facebook, for example, the community wanted the brand to be a bit more raunchy. The community wanted the brand to be a bit more out there. And we started drifting towards that. And I realized within a few weeks that was the wrong thing to do for the brand, because even though that's what the community wanted, we were losing sight of who we were globally. We were losing sight of what the brand stood for. And it really was about how do you bring the audience towards you, and how do you explain to them, this is how we position ourselves, while still listening to the audience and seeing where that balance exists. And that really is, sometimes it's difficult to tackle, but the whole point around this is when you say that this is what you stand for, like for example, within the context of this workshop, solar challenge cars, if that's what you stand for, then, and if your audience wants you just to talk about, let's say, something that's completely off topic, but that's what they want, how do you rather bring them closer to you than acquiesce and then lose who you are and lose your essence? And that's really, it's a tough area, but it's something to think about, is whatever you put out there, again, it comes back to those 3 principles. Those never change. Is it credible? So when you get involved in a movement, is it credible for your brand? Do you reflect it internally? Is it something that's authentic? And if not, something to think about before you put yourself out there. So I hope that sort of covers that. What we also find really helpful is, as a brand, when you think about your content, also think about your look and feel. Think about your templates. Think about your design choices. Are you all over the place, or do you have a consistent look and feel? Do you have a mix? Is it easy for you to jump on something? Let's say, for example, there is a tactical opportunity. So there is a trending hashtag that you can totally be part of because it makes sense for your brand. It's credible for your brand, and you should be part of that. How easy is it easier for you to turn around something very quickly? So what the Sasol Solar Challenge team have is they've developed a whole bunch of different templates. So this is one of the image templates that they use with a little bit of copy at the bottom. They've got other templates where it's more text heavy. Do you have templates? Do you have a CI, the logo for your team? Is it somewhere that people can access it? Do you have good governance around it? Do you protect it? Because think of this as being a very powerful brand. Whatever your brand is, you want to make sure it's precious. You want to make sure that it has value. So what are you doing yourself so that every piece of communication just shares that idea that it has value? So again, something to think about. And what I want to do now is I want to pause slightly just to talk about and come back to maybe the content pillars. So Seema gave the great example of alumni. Safia raised a very good point around, where do you get involved in as a brand? But let's bring it back and let's start thinking. So if brands who've been on solar challenges before, you've got a great opportunity to do legacy content. Brands who've never been on a solar challenge, you've got a great opportunity to be to talk about the journey. What are those challenges? And think about human interest. People want to resonate and they want to empathize with others who have difficulty but have overcome it. So I think, and as a brand as well, as Sasol, what we do a lot, and you'll see this on our LinkedIn page, is I share a lot of stories where my colleagues have had challenges with certain things. So maybe at one of our facilities, there was a reactor that wasn't working as to plan. What did they do? What are the steps they took in order to fix that? Because sometimes we get so caught up in everything being perfect and sort of just celebrating the end result that we don't actually look back and we say, it took so much to get there. And there's a story in there. There's beauty in that. So again, maybe one of your weekly pillars could be challenges. What is this week's challenge? Because maybe every week or every month there's a mini challenge. And maybe that challenge is, okay, our challenge is we have to figure out design. Here's what goes into it. Our challenge is that we have to fix a certain component. Or our challenge is that a team member had to leave, or whatever it is. Maybe take people through that journey, and that could be something we do as well. It doesn't have to be weekly, but maybe every 2 weeks you can highlight something, and you can call it reflections. So call that content theme or content pillar reflections. Ask a team member, what's that one thing that you had difficulty with in the last 2 weeks related to the solar team, the solar car, and then share that. And how did you overcome it? So again, you bring people on that journey so that when they see you at the start line next year, they don't forget all that effort that got you there to that start line. And that, I think, is something, again, that we need to celebrate, because it's too easy to see the end product and not realize the effort that goes into it. Cool. And before we move on, is there anyone else who'd like to share maybe another idea for a content theme that we can all sort of look at as well? So I've suggested a few: legacy, inspiration, behind the scenes, team profiles. So I'll just pause for a few seconds and see if there's anything else that anyone would like to add. Perfect. So I count to 5, right? The old 5-second rule, except this time I'm not eating food off the floor and eating it. I'm moving on to the next slide. Cool. So what you would have noticed is that we are very deliberate with hashtags. And what you can see in the background is I've just taken a quick screenshot of all the hashtags associated with the Sasol Solar Challenge in the last 8 months. And when I joined the company in 2014, we were very specific that we would brand the hashtag as hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge. And we do that for a few reasons. The first reason is we don't like dating our hashtags. So that's why you wouldn't see Sasol Solar Challenge 16 for 2016 or Sasol Solar Challenge 18, because when you date something, you limit its legacy and you limit its potential. So now if anyone had to go and click on hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge, you will see thousands and thousands of pieces of content from the first time Sasol sponsored it right till today. And it gives you really rich legacy on the Sasol Solar Challenge. So it tells a story, and that's why we like that. Number two, and the reason why we spell it out as Sasol Solar Challenge, is even if you're not familiar with it, it tells you enough. And sometimes we get caught where our hashtags, because we want to contract it so much, it doesn't actually say anything. And I don't want to pick on, obviously, the other events out there, but when you develop hashtags, think about a hashtag as being something that's standalone, a hashtag that's being valuable on its own, so that you don't necessarily need to explain to someone what it is, that they get it the first time. And what's important is for all the team to also use hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge. So you can have a secondary hashtag if you want to, build something for your team or whatever it is. But it's important that we keep hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge so that we can find each other's content, we can amplify that content, and we can celebrate it. So again, at Sasol, we've got a massive machine when it comes to digital presence, right? We've got 750,000 followers on our platforms. And my request or my value to everyone listening today is, if you have a Sasol Solar Challenge team, or if you have a solar team that's going to be in the Sasol Solar Challenge, and if you use hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge in your content, we can then pick it up and we can amplify it to our audience. At the last Sasol Solar Challenge in 2018, we reached 52 million people. Think about that. 52 million people who were engaged and who shared that content around just the hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge. Now imagine tapping into that with your team, tapping into that with your platform, and just allowing us and allowing the Sasol Solar Challenge team themselves, so Rob and the team, to amplify what you're doing. And really, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build this community, and we're trying to get the word out there and get as many people as invested as possible. So my request to everyone who has a solar car team and is going to participate in the Sasol Solar Challenge is to use hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge and allow us to then amplify what you're doing and allow us all to really build each other up. I think that's something for us to think about. Cool. And the reason why I put this poster in, so this is from Twilight's Saga New Moon. It released in 2009. It's a bit old now. And when I watched the movie, when I got out of the cinema, I was a little upset. I didn't like the movie at all. So it wasn't for me. And I was complaining to a friend of mine, and I said, I really hate this movie. And he looked at me and he said, and it's something that stood out. He said, the reason you don't like it is because you're not the target market. And that really resonates with me. So I wonder sometimes, like, what am I doing to censor or to limit the potential of something that could be really great just because I might not be the target market? So this is a point of reflection for those on the call, is think about that. I didn't like it because I'm not the target market. Is there something, is there a pillar, is there an opportunity? Ask your team members, ask the rest of the faculty, what else can you talk about the Sasol Solar Challenge that maybe you haven't thought about? Why? Because it just wasn't meant for you, or that aspect wasn't for you. So just something to think about. I always put this in to humble myself. Cool. So now we're on to the third C. So let's recap. The first C was context. The second C was content. And now we speak about channel. The mistake a lot of brands make is they talk about channel first. So we often hear things like, okay, we've got a solar team, we need to be on Facebook. Or we have a solar team, we need to be on Instagram, or we need to be on TikTok, because TikTok's the new thing. But then I always ask, okay, what's your objective? What are you trying to achieve with your content strategy? Who's your target market? What do you want to tell them? What's your content? And then, then we talk about channel. Because if you look at channel first, what happens is you might be completely misaligned to what you want to achieve and who you want to talk to and what you want to tell them. So for me, channel is always the third C, and it has to be in that order. So when we talk about channel and we talk about what are the channels that work? What are the channels that are powerful? Think about what content you have and think about your audience and what you want to achieve. If you have lots of beautiful imagery, then Instagram, definitely, that's a great space for you to be in. I find that LinkedIn is also a very powerful platform to be in, especially if you're part of a team. So on your personal LinkedIn account, have you created a project with your team name in it? Have you linked all the other members to it? Because LinkedIn has such great value from search engine optimization perspective. So there's an opportunity there. What's great about Facebook is this massive meta platform that allows you to create events, create groups, share easily. So Facebook could be a viable place for you. We find Twitter is often a powerful platform for play-by-play, depending on the region or the country. So in certain countries, we have a great success with Twitter. So for example, in South Africa, we find that Twitter works very well across the board for all our campaigns. In other countries, like for example, in Mozambique, we find that Twitter is not as popular. So in Mozambique, we do a lot of our efforts through WhatsApp. So again, think about your market, think about your region, think about your audience. And then from there, decide, which channels are good for you, which ones aren't good for you. So as the Sasol brand, we find a lot of value in YouTube because we create content, a lot of video content. But again, we're a big brand, so we can do that. Maybe YouTube isn't for you because you simply don't create a lot. Look at your capabilities, look at what your content is, and let that, with the audience and with your objective, let that sort of inform your channel and what you use the channel for. So again, just something to think about when it comes to choosing the platforms. And really, once you know what you want to achieve, and once you know who your audience is, and maybe once you see where the other teams are, because remember, we want to build each other, we want to share, we want to engage, we want to lift, then that'll also help. So have a look at the Sasol Solar Challenge Instagram page, the Facebook page, the Twitter account, see what they're doing on their different platforms and say, hey, I've got something that I can share to these platforms every week or every second week, or I can take something from their platforms, share into mine. Why don't I just create that? And maybe that's how you sort of get a sense of where to be. Now remember, just because there's a new channel doesn't mean you need to be there. Like as a brand like Sasol, I can't think of a reason why we need to be on Snapchat that's compelling. So we're not on Snapchat. Same with TikTok. Once I figure out, hey, there's a great opportunity for us to be on TikTok, we'll revisit that platform. But just because there's a channel that's out there does not necessitate you being there as well as a brand. So again, just something to think about. But look at where you can create content, but look at where you can curate content as well. So if you find that the Sasol Solar Challenge is doing a great job on Facebook and you can easily then plug that into your platforms, then do that. Share, add your point of view on top of it or your little bit of spice, and then share that so that it doesn't become effort. And also it's very important, think beyond social media platforms. So not only does your brand need to have a good a social media presence, you also need to know when someone Googles you or Googles your brand name, what comes up? How much of that real estate do you own? When someone Googles it, have you decided to create a Wikipedia entry that documents your team name, your team over the years, what it has achieved, newspaper articles? And again, I have to remind you, the Sasol Solar Challenge, it has a machine behind it, a communication and PR machine, so that there's so many newsworthy stories happening and that you can just pluck from there and then build your online presence. So think of your online presence beyond social. Think about your Google location. So for your university, on your Google location listing, is there an opportunity to profile your solar team? Your faculty page, is it giving enough relevance and visibility to what you're doing? And how do you ensure that you tell your story and you position yourself well, not just using Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but really thinking when people search for us on digital platforms, what can they find? So one thing we did in 2018 is that every single stop that the Sasol Solar Challenge had, so whether it was a town like Sedgefield or whatever, we did localized keywords for each of those towns so that we can get people to attend the Sasol Solar Challenge, and we can also have Sasol Solar Challenge images in those towns. So if I come back to this picture very quickly, and there's this beautiful church in the background, as you can see. So whenever we go to that town, we need to make sure that when people search for that town outside of the Sasol Solar Challenge, some of those images that come up would have a solar car in it, so that our digital presence is really rich and not just confined to social, that it's sustainable, that we're telling a story over time. So really that's the third C, and that's channels. So let's pause for a second before we jump to this fourth C. And just again, so you've got your objectives, you've got your target market, you've written down a few content areas, write down channels. It could be your existing channels that you already have and maybe you need to dust them off. It could be that you're already advanced and what I'm just saying just confirms everything you know already, and that's also cool. Or it could be, hey, here's an opportunity for us. Here's something we can look into. So my suggestion is just write 2 or 3 channels that you want to consider for the next few months. And I think without being too prescriptive, I think if you've got a lot of beautiful imagery, Instagram's a great place to be. I find that Facebook's functionality is so strong for just doing a whole lot of things. So if your pillar was behind the scenes or something like that, that's great. Like Seema said, if you're going to do Zoom videos and you're going to record them, where are you going to host it? Maybe then that would necessitate a YouTube channel where you could have a playlist for all your different Zoom videos. Because one of the challenges with social media is very effervescent. You know, you scroll and you miss it. So what are you doing to package this content so that people who come and meet your page or come to your page in 5 months' time can go back and look at it? So are you creating albums, for example, for your different pillars where it's easy for people to find something? That's why I like the hashtag. You can click on the hashtag today, or you can click on the hashtag in 3 months' time, Sasol Solar Challenge, and you'll be able to see such rich content that we've developed over time. So again, you know, just something to think about is what platforms should you be on? And my invitation is to everyone on this group, if you like. So I'll give you my email address at the end. Share your current platforms with me, if you like, and I'll have a look at them. And we can talk about them individually via email, and you can bounce ideas off me, and you can say, MJ, here's what I have currently. What do you think? Where's the opportunity? Here's what I'm thinking. As long as you come to me at the end and say, here's my notes, here's what I took down, here's my opportunity, I'll gladly share some time, and we can talk about how do we build it. And then my promise to you is you and I will go to Rob and his team, and I know they're always willing because they're such great partners of ours, and say, Rob, look at these guys. They're creating such good content every week. Let's profile them, let's amplify their content, and let's make it shine. So again, that's our invitation. And Rob, am I correct in co-opting you in that? That's what we'll do, and we'll amplify everyone's content?
100% MJ. I think for us, one of the things we've really learned as well is community content is really key. And we have seen that certain teams, when they kind of join in, and anyone who's been on the Solar Challenge has before will have seen, is that if you guys do that, then we're very happy to amplify it, because for us it's just a natural extension of our message.
100%. And remember, the more organizations and the more teams that talk about solar racing, the bigger the credibility is. So again, let's be realistic. I represent the brand Sasol, so we have a vested interest because it's a sponsorship property, and as a sponsor, we want to make sure we get enough mileage out of it. So we will push it. But for others, think of the value that the Sasol Solar Challenge presents to you and how you leverage it. Because if all you use the Sasol Solar Challenge for is to pitch up for the race, do your 8 days or do your week and then end, then you haven't really maximized the opportunity that the Sasol Solar Challenge presents to you. So that really is our challenge for everyone today. And sometimes I know people say it's difficult to write good content. So I don't believe in saying your post needs to be this long or this short or whatever it is. Because when we talk about best practice, the problem with best practice is that best practice is always, or rather, if I had to Google best practice right now, I'll get millions and millions of results. But that's what's best practice for other brands. So I tell my colleagues as well at Sasol, best practice for Sasol is what's best for Sasol. So those team members who are here representing the different solar car teams, best practice for you is what is best practice for you. What works for you. Because you cannot be another brand. You can look at the other brands and you can learn from them, but they're doing their own thing. You know, you've got your own challenges, you've got your own opportunities, you've got your own stories. But what often helps me is whenever I'm constructing content or writing my content, I always think about three things. Whenever I write, do I have a key message? Do I have something that I want to share and something I want to tell people? Okay, so here's my key message, here's my salient point. Okay, what do I want them to do with that? Do I have a call to action? Am I asking them to read more, to watch this, to engage, to share their thoughts? What's my call to action? And then finally, do I have a nice piece of creative or some form of design or image to just tie it all up, to reinforce my message? So that's something to think about when you're writing content, you know, what's your key message? What's your call to action? So you told someone something, what do you want them to do with that? And finally, do you have a nice piece of creative to reinforce that message? And that really helps when developing content. It's daunting to write a media release. It is daunting to write an essay. So don't try and write essays. Maybe save that for once every 3 months or whatever it is. For your always on, what's that one key thing you want to share this week? And what do you want people to take out of it? What do you want them to associate with your brand? So that in 6 months' time, when we say this is team A, what is that association of your brand? Are you a challenger brand? Are you groundbreaking? Are you innovative? You know, are you do you use ingenuity? Do you make a plan? Like what is your brand? Something to think about. So we come now to the last part of the presentation and the last C, and that is controls. So controls speaks to measurement. So how would you actually measure the success of your campaign? And what are we doing? So for a team here that wants to be part of the Sasol Challenge, but isn't, a success measure for them could be, along with what we're doing on digital, along with what we're doing offline and we're campaigning, we managed to get confirmation that we can be part of the next Sasol Challenge. That could be a measurement of success. For a team that's already in the Sasol Challenge, maybe a measurement of success could be, we want to retain certain sponsors. We want to attract new sponsors. We want to get bigger buy-in from our university. I know a few years ago, success measure for one of the universities was that the university social media account started celebrating the team, you know? And sometimes it's difficult for the entire university to get on board. So for me, that's a great success measure. So if you're representing a university, or some form of higher learning institution, are they behind you? Are they backing you? Are they your cheerleaders? You know, are they celebrating you? And that could be a measure of success. Another part of controls, and then you get your digital success as well. And I'm going to touch on that in a few slides. But another part of it is escalation. So as part of your controls, do you have an FAQ? So frequently asked questions. So when people engage with you and they want to know about, you know, they want to learn more, do you have something to share with them? If they want to find out how to get involved, do you have something there? If they want to find out how can they sponsor, do you have a contact point? So think of your holding statements, think of your frequently asked questions. And within 3 or 4 months, I find that you will figure out 80% of the questions that you get, and you'll be able to manage that. And you'll be able to then be very confident in your community management in terms of how you escalate different questions and how you help. Think of your governance as well. If you're going to get team members to manage the social media platforms, how are you going to be able to distinguish from a tone of voice? How do you identify who's managing the page when? What is your service level agreement amongst yourselves in terms of if there's a query, you know, how soon do you address it? How do you manage that? Who posts? When do you post? When don't you post? So think about it upfront, like have a loose sense of governance and know that it builds up over time. As you get a bit more comfortable, as more and more people get on board, think of different ways you can share the page and really get as many voices as possible, just talking about the team. And what we do sometimes, again, as Sasol, is, so I manage the main Sasol global accounts, and we have different team members around the world who will be involved in events because, you know, I just simply can't be everywhere. So there'll be an event in Hambane in Mozambique, or there'll be an event that we have in Hamburg, Germany. We've got some facilities there, or in any of the other 29 countries. And the team members will then share those stories from their personal accounts, and I'll amplify it from the Sasol account. Or I'll write it from the Sasol account and attribute it to them. So again, think of the governance around your social media. And, we can have a separate discussion on this as well, where I can give some tips and I can share a social media policy builder as well. And it's just something to think about. So if anyone's interested in that, in fact, let me know now. So I'm going to give a few seconds. Let me know if anyone here on the call is interested in receiving a social media policy builder to help them with governance for their teams. Oh, I see the chat is popping in. Oh, lovely. Oh, yeah. So sorry, I was neglecting the chat for a bit. So I am looking through the chat right now. This is beautiful. Oh, I love this. Hey, Sun Chaser, UJ, Anadolu. Oh, some beautiful, beautiful teams. Damien, Nelson Mandela University, we're rooting for you. Come on, get a team. Hey, Nicholas from Chile. Great to have you. Nobushle as well, St. Albans College. Oh, this is wonderful. So sorry, I got so sort of invested in writing down my own framework and doing my presentation that I haven't, hey Sanke, oh, I love this team, that I haven't had a chance to go through the chat. So now that I'm going through it, this is great. So I'm so glad everyone's interested. Rob, I'll send through to you a social media policy builder with some thoughts. Again, it's like a framework like what we're building today. And then all you need to do is just follow the steps and it gives you a loose policy to work with. So I'm glad that that could be helpful for everyone. I want to talk a bit now about benchmarking. And often when we do measurements and we do controls, we get a little fixated on some of the digital stuff. And there's for me, I always call it the bane of digital and the problem with digital. The problem with digital is because you can measure so much. You can measure little interactions and you can measure likes and you can measure page growth and engagement and all those things, is that sometimes we get so caught up in measurement that we lose sight of what is the actual objective. So we might say that our objective is to grow the Facebook page by 1,000 likes or whatever it is. But then what does that mean? What's the value of that? How do we then take those 1,000 new likes and convert them into advocates? So that whoever's liking the page isn't just liking the page because they want to show support. They want to get invested. They want to engage. They want to comment. They want to be part of the team in some way or form. So do you have, your brand advocates, your brand loyalists, your fans, and how do you celebrate them? And sometimes the problem with benchmarking is we get so fixated on like everything you can measure that we don't take a step back and say, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What was that main objective we put right up front in context? And are we meeting that? And if we're not meeting it, again, it's okay, because, don't live and die on this is the objective, this is what we have to do. Sometimes objectives change because the world changes. 5 months ago, I would have not had this big beard sitting in my room and talking. I would be in my office or being, I would have been at one of our facilities and I would be doing something there. So also don't die on a principle and say, no, this was the objective, it has to be. What makes sense for you right now? What's your context? It's that quote about the book. What makes a book good is that you're reading it at the right moment for you. So when it comes to benchmarking, don't be too difficult if you haven't met a certain quota that you've self-imposed. When it comes to benchmarking, don't worry too much about what the others are doing, what the other teams are doing, because it might be what you can see, which is things like their likes and their engagement, but it's also what you can't see. You can't see the digital maturity of their audience. You can't see whether they're doing any other form of investment. You can't see all the background stuff that also pushes there. So run your own race and get a sense of, am I succeeding today? And for me, if you're on this call, if within the next month or so, you say, hey, I figured out I'm going to do this content strategy. I'm going to try it for 3 months and just tell our story, then I feel that's success. So again, when it comes to benchmarking and these sorts of things, don't be too hard on yourself and use this as an opportunity to learn and grow and build. And in the background is this old Sasol ad. It's the old Look ad from 1990. And what I like about it is sometimes with digital, we get so fixated on measurements that we forget the warm and fuzzies. we look at a post as being successful because it got a lot of likes or it got a lot of shares, as opposed to this post is great because it celebrates our people. This post is great because it's meaningful for us. And I don't want to lose that. So when you write your content as well, and when you look at how your controls and your measures, don't just look at it within the eye of how many people liked the post. And if they didn't, oh, it was a terrible post. Maybe it just wasn't the right time. Maybe there was something else that was occupying them, like a global pandemic, for example. Or maybe it's okay. It just wasn't the right time for them. But put your heart into it. And I think those are the brands that win, are the brands that can show vulnerability, the teams that can show, like, this is what we're doing. Not the teams that are perfect, because when you're perfect, it's like, okay, then you don't really have a story, you won, like whatever. But if you show that you're striving, you're challenging, that you have something meaningful to share, I think that's then very valuable. So that's the end of the framework discussion in terms of the formal presentation. Again, we're going to open up for questions now. You can ask me anything. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can find me. So my online username is concerning MJ, and you can use that and find me across the board, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I do have a TikTok account, but it'll disappoint you because I'm very lame. Or any of the other platforms. I invite everyone here, get in touch with me. Let's connect on Twitter. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I'm very proud. I manage the largest corporate page in South Africa. The Sasol page has 500,000 followers. And I'm constantly sharing my thoughts in terms of how we build that page. What are we doing? What works? What didn't work? But then what we learned from it. And again, I'm very comfortable with sharing my journey, because not everything's a success. We're figuring stuff out. Digital is this monster that sort of lives in the hill, and we all try and grab it and we get tufts of its hair, but we don't actually grab it completely because it's evolving so quickly. So that's what makes it exciting. And with that, that's the end of the formal presentation. I'd like to thank you again for your time and open it up for any questions that we might have, both on the chat, if you don't want to speak, or you're welcome to speak. So we'll start by taking a few questions from the chat. So I'll give you a few moments to type up your questions if you're on the chat, and then we can take it from there. And then after that, we'll do a few questions if you'd like to speak. Cool, so I'll give everyone a few seconds to type up if you have any comments you'd like to leave in the group chat. Oh, some great comments. So as people are typing, I just want to reflect on Team Soncare, and one of the stories that really touched me at the 2018 Sasol Solar Challenge. So we were at one of the endpoints. It was a Kharib Dam. It's a beautiful dam, overlooking, well, at this resort. And we were having supper that night. And I sat with a team, a very young team, Team Soncare. And I was listening to the students discuss what the Sasol Solar Challenge meant to them. And for them, it was about how do we use engineering as a force for good? How do we use whatever we're learning here at the Sasol Solar Challenge to go back to our communities, see what challenges the communities are facing, and use engineering to solve those challenges? And I shared that with a friend of mine, and he's part of Engineers Without Borders. And for me, that was so gratifying that that's what they took out of the Sasol Solar Challenge. So team, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate just spending time with the team members at the last Sasol Solar Challenge. It was humbling and it was so meaningful for me. So shout out to you and your team. Cool. So I don't see any questions on the chat. Except TUT Sanchesa. I must say, I love the TUT team. I've got lots of fun memories with the comms team from TUT. Great stories, profiling the different drivers, and really the Sasol Solar Challenge. For me, it's a celebration of multidisciplinary faculties. It's about everyone coming in with a common goal and really sort of pushing and going forward together. So Seema loved to ride with TUT. TUT had some great stories and they had amazing resilience. I remember the last Sasol Solar Challenge, we had a lot of interesting climate challenges. So pouring rain and just a whole lot of different things to deal with. And the teams were unbelievable. And again, it's not, for me, we celebrate the teams that make it to the starting line and push off, because we know what you had to get through to get there. And that for me is a great story. Cool. So thanks everyone from the group chat. I'll give it maybe about 10 or 15 seconds. If anybody wants to ask a question via their mic, you're welcome to do so now.
MJ, so maybe one thing that from my side is, if you could say that there was one most important thing, like if let's say somebody, all they've done on social media is they've opened up a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and maybe an Instagram account, and if you could say that there's one, like the overriding one key principle that you would say like is stands head and shoulders above everything, what would that one principle for you be?
So the one takeaway for me for today would be start sharing content. So if you look at the slide where it's the always on and the campaign, today. Sure, you've got those accounts, but start today. Start telling your story from today. Think about those areas and remember, credible, sustainable, valuable. So that would be my takeaway from today is it's one thing to have those platforms. Don't switch it on at the beginning of February. It's too late. Get people emotionally invested from today. From today, think about what you want to share. And here's something everyone can do. So you don't have to write your own content today. The Sasol Solar Challenge team has hundreds of pieces of content on their platforms. The Sasol team, if you just had to search for hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge, you will find thousands of pieces of content from throughout the years. So maybe it's you might be a little scared because the pool is cold and you don't want to dip your toe in. So start by sharing. Share one thing that you like with a little bit. Maybe it could be looking forward to the Sasol Solar Challenge. Click here to learn more, and then you link to the Solar Challenge website. And that's my challenge, and that's the one thing I want everyone to do today is just commit to just putting your toe in the water and sharing one thing, and then take it from there. And the truth is, the more you share, the more comfortable you get, and the richer and more meaningful it becomes. And we're not here because we want to get millions and millions of followers or whatever it is. You know, if we get that, that's cool. But we're here because we have a great story to tell, and we want the world to know the cool stuff we do. Yeah, so that's my takeaway. Just start sharing.
Awesome. Thank you, MJ. I think that's hugely helpful. I don't know if there's any other questions from anyone out there before we close off. I see lots of people sharing their thanks for a great presentation.
Lots of love for everyone sharing their thoughts. I must say it was, Lisa's going to ask a question, so she does. This has been such a pleasure for me, Rob. So thank you so much for giving me this platform. And for everyone as well, give us love on the Sasol platforms as well. We're on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Come share some thoughts with me and on my personal accounts. Let's talk about it. One question, is it Sasol Solar Challenge lowercase or Sasol Solar Challenge camel case? So camel case is when you capitalize the first word, the first letter, everyone. We always use camel case, and we do that for two reasons. The first reason is it makes it easier to read. So now when you have the word, the two S's and the C capitalized, so for those who don't know, I'm talking to the group chat question now. Malisa asked, is it Sasol Solar Challenge lowercase, or is it what we call in the industry camel case, where the first letter is capitalized? It's always camel case. So some platforms will change it automatically. So Instagram, for example, I think they do everything lowercase, but where possible, do camel case, because number one, it makes it easier for people to read, so they know that those are the three distinct words. And number two, and this is something I read about recently. So I do a lot of user experience and user interface training and learning, and I do a lot of those courses because I'm fascinated with that, is that if you are engaging on a social media platform and you have a sight disability, if a hashtag is written in camel case, like where everything is capitalized, the narrator, it's easier for them to tell you what it is because they would recognize it as Sasol Solar Challenge. So definitely try and do camel case as far as possible. Camel case, again, for everyone who's not familiar with the jargon, is when you capitalize the first letter of every word. Cool. Oh, screen, and Sema as well adds a very good point. Screen readers. can read it too. So that's why we choose camel case. Oh, camel, you know, the humps. Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much. I hope that answers that question. And if there's no further questions for now, we'll call this to an end. But again, so my two offers still remain. The first offer is that if you've got a platform, you know, send me an email, include Rob in it. Let's talk about your platform. Let's talk about how you can start sharing. If I can get just a few emails from people today to say, hey, I made some notes. Here's what I want to do. What do you think? You know, we'll do that. And my second offer to everyone today is, as Sasol, if you use hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge and you're telling me your story, we're going to amplify that on our platforms. So use us as a way to really kickstart your growth. Because again, we've got a huge organic community. We reach millions of people every month. You know, why not jump on our platforms and let us amplify your content? So that's my offer to everyone today. In order to get the amplification, you have to use hashtag Sasol Solar Challenge and just give me a shout out, say, hey, MJ, this is what I'm doing, so we can keep an eye on it. And for those who want to start sharing, want to start getting involved, just think about what we wrote today and then just pop us a mail and we'll take it from there. Cool. And I think, yeah, that's it from me. So Rob, over for you for end shots and parting remarks. Thanks everybody once again for listening in.
Cool. MJ, look, thank you very much. I think a lot of people have taken a lot of value out of this. It's quite nice for me to see quite a lot of the guys who are on the sponsorship workshop also joining this one. And I think those of you who were there will see there's a direct link now between how you amplify your message and tell your story as a team or a brand to your sponsors, and how that obviously has an intimate link with your digital and social presence, because that's where most of your sponsors are going to see what you guys are doing. So if as a team you've been struggling with sponsors, it could probably be a starting point where your story and your digital content isn't attractive enough to them. So this is a great starting point, as MJ said, start now. And then when you're talking to a sponsor or a partner or your faculty, this is that they can see your story visually told in front of them. And this is going to help you a lot. So from all of us at the Sasol Solar Challenge, thank you, MJ, for taking the time. We have recorded this whole session, and we will be sharing the recording. So if you would like to have the recording, you can just follow us. We'll put a few links out shortly. You can have the recording and you can go through anything that MJ has spoken of, and just make sure you've got all that information. So from myself, Rob, and the entire team at the Sasol Solar Challenge, final thank you to MJ, and thank you to everyone. I think we peaked at about 35 participants throughout the whole workshop. It was really, really well attended. So thank you guys. We've got people all the way from South America to kind of Asia and Australia on. So thank you for everyone at all times of the day. And we will chat to you guys soon. Keep an eye out for our next workshop in about a month's time. We'll be having another one of these. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon, guys.
Cheers, folks. Thanks so much. Bye.